Hey there, are you an entrepreneur looking to start, launch, or grow a podcast? If you said yes, I am so happy you're here. I'm Kristen, a video and podcast producer and CEO of Novice Studios, a production company for podcasters. I help business owners launch and grow their podcasts to serve their audience, build community, and boost sales. I hope you'll subscribe to our show so we can help your show grow from novice to noteworthy. Welcome back to the Novice to Noteworthy podcast. It's been a minute since I've uploaded an episode. I'm going to share a little bit about why, maybe a little bit in this episode, maybe in a future episode, but I'm here at the Huga Studio on J Street in Charlotte. If you're familiar, I've been working with a lot of clients out of this studio, recording with them in person, and we had some extra time left in our reservation. So I figured it was a good time to get back on the mic and record some new content for the podcast. So I have so many ideas of upcoming episodes, things to talk about, so many things that we've been learning over the last 6 months here at Novice Studios. One of them being, all the new YouTube podcast features, doing a lot of seasonal podcasts versus weekly podcasts, and what that's been like for us, and what it's been like for our clients too, of managing their energy and being able to plan for a season versus feeling like they're on the hamster wheel. So we're going to get to all that good stuff. But today I want to talk about why you need a podcast producer or a podcast manager and not just an editor. I think a lot of people, when they're looking to outsource their podcast, the first thing that they go to is editing. Either they've been doing it, they know it takes forever, and they don't want to put in that effort anymore, or they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't even know where to start. And so I want to look for an editor first. And we have a lot of people come to us who are looking for editing, and they see that we offer all these other things, and we don't offer editing only. And so I want to talk about why we structure our offers that way and why you want to be looking for a producer and not just an editor. So this kind of came to my attention. We have an editor in-house that works on our client podcast. His name is Adam. He's amazing. And he was like, hey, I was looking at, the clients that have left us over the last year for various reasons. Usually it's because they are bringing their podcast in-house. Like they have somebody who, and none of our clients are like creative agencies or anything like that. They're all in the coaching consulting space for the most part. And they're like, we have somebody who's interested in this or vaguely knows how to do this. And so we're going to have them work on the podcast. Or we've had people say, hey, I found somebody cheaper who can do the editing and I could do all the other pieces. Those are kind of the main two reasons. Or people are like, I just need a break. Having a podcast is so much work, even if I'm just doing the recording, which is also valid as well. But the trend that we've seen is that those podcasts will continue on their own for a little bit, and then they just totally die off. This happened with the Novice to Noteworthy podcast. We got 2 episodes into it, and there was a lot going on at the time that I launched this podcast in my personal life and in the business. And so it wasn't feasible for me to do, even with Adam's help with actually editing the episode. I still had to write the show notes. I still had to pull video clips and post them on social media. I still had to schedule it to YouTube. I had to make a thumbnail. I had to get it scheduled in Anchor. Like there's all these steps that are involved in producing a podcast, and editing is just one of them. It's the one that I think people are the most intimidated by, but it is just one piece of the total podcast puzzle. So I really want to dig into why that is. And Adam was like, we've got to talk about this. And it's absolutely no shade to previous clients, or if you need to take a break from your podcast and pick it up at another time that works better for you, that is 100% okay. And we would love for, clients that have left us to come back to us. But now there's all these tools like Descript, a lot of AI-based editors, AI-based tools. And, I don't want to throw shade and I don't want to say outright that they suck, but some of the AI-based tools for writing show notes, they suck. They're not good. because it doesn't sound human. And it's going to be difficult for AI to learn your brand voice and your unique tone of voice, but it's something that we have perfected really well here in Novice Studios. Let's say you have somebody on your team who is interested in podcast production, or you have a friend who's interested in podcast production. They have some experience with it. If they don't have a dedicated schedule for working on podcast production clients, it is going to fall to the wayside. That has been the trend that we've seen with other shows that we're either not working on anymore, or, potential clients that then, go on to one of these other solutions for producing their show. Is that, if you have somebody on your team whose main role is to work on client-facing projects or to take things off of your plate that aren't necessarily creative, it's very specific to what you do in your business, that is going to be that person's top priority, as it should be. And so naturally, if you're in a busy season in your business and that person is mainly working on client-facing things, that is the number one priority, the podcast is going to fall to the wayside. And again, maybe that makes sense. Maybe you have a seasonal podcast that you can structure around those busy seasons. But if you want to have a podcast that's going to grow, it needs to be consistent. Even if it is seasonal, the breaks in between seasons need to be short. And if you have a dedicated podcast production company or podcast producer that is working on that content for you, it's going to get done. That is like their bread and butter. It's what that person's going to be focused on day in and day out. And so that when you send those recordings to your podcast producer, it gets done. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. And that just isn't necessarily the case if you are working with a friend who has a busy 9-to-5 schedule and a life outside of that, and, making sure that they squeeze in your podcast, especially if they're not familiar with different editing strategies or show note strategies or SEO or any of those things. It's going to take them longer. It's going to fall to the wayside, and then it's just not going to work out long-term for your podcast. One of the things that we do run into is that finding, somebody to just edit your podcast is going to be cheaper than hiring a full-on production company or production team to work on your show. And that's true. We are more expensive than just hiring an editor, by themselves. But we take everything from the recording to it getting published out into the world, and we do it all for you. And an editor by themselves is not necessarily going to be able to do all of those things sustainably for you, especially if like you're the only podcast that they're working on. It might seem like, oh, I'm the only podcast that they're working on. They should be able to just focus on me. But again, if they don't have that dedicated schedule to your podcast, it eventually is going to fall to the wayside. And one of the things about our pricing is that we are still competitive with other podcast production companies, for sure. We get told very often that we need to raise our prices, but ultimately, I think that I really love doing everything for our clients. I love writing the show notes. I love that we're producing audiograms for them, that we're producing social media clips for them. I love that they can take the content we create for them and repurpose them for all different things for their business, and take that content and have it be part of a larger content strategy. We do analytics reports because we know what to look for and how to read the stats in Anchor and Libsyn and Podbean. I think I want to say it's Beansprout. It's definitely not Beansprout. Buzzsprout is what it is. And Buzzsprout on YouTube, we're super, super familiar with YouTube. And so we know how to read all of those statistics, and we know how to take that and turn it into a content strategy. And that's where, that higher price point comes in. But that the content that you're creating has a purpose, that it is not just like speaking into the void. It's giving people what they actually want. It's giving people what they're searching for. It's feeling like you're actually solving a problem for your audience. A podcast producer is going to make sure that you're doing that in every single episode and across the board with your podcast. For a select few of our clients, we do or we have in the past, done editing only. If a client has come to us with a backlog of content and said, hey, I've recorded all these podcast episodes, but they've just been sitting in Google Drive. They're not going anywhere. I don't have the time to edit them. We've been like, okay, send them to us. We'll take care of it for you. We see that even with that editing getting done, sometimes the episodes don't go out on time because there's all these other pieces that are involved with it. There's writing the show notes. There's coming up with a title. There's scheduling it in the podcast hosting platform. If you're uploading it to YouTube, it's getting a thumbnail made. Like there's all these extra steps. And when you are already so tired that you can't even, sit down to edit your podcast, which again is completely understandable. Editing is a huge undertaking in itself, but there's so much that happens after that edit is done that having the editing off of your shoulders might still feel like a huge sigh of relief. But there's still so many steps that come after that. So if you have a team that's doing all of it for you, it gets done. It helps keep you consistent. It helps take away some of that guilt of I've interviewed all these people and they're expecting their episode to go out at some point and I just don't even know what to tell them. It just it lifts this huge weight off of your shoulders. But to know that the title is engaging and it has SEO keywords that are going to help people find that content to begin with. And the show notes are written in your brand voice and it's scheduled to your hosting platform for you. Knowing that all of those things are taken care of is going to help even more weight come off of your shoulders. And so that is why we do everything from soup to nuts when it comes to podcast production for our clients. So hopefully that sheds some light on the podcast production process, everything that we put into our specific packages, and the difference ultimately between a podcast producer and a podcast editor. They are very different roles. We do have people still reach out to us that are like, we just need somebody to edit this, or we just need somebody to, tack these pieces onto a podcast. And again, it's just one piece of so many that go into having a podcast that you want to make sure that it's done well. You want to make sure that it's not rushed, that you're not sitting on content that you've paid to have edited that then you don't post because there's all these other steps that you have to do. And that is what happened with Novice to Noteworthy. In the midst of all the chaos of Q1 of this year that has turned into a chaotic Q2, which has turned into a chaotic Q3. This year has been so wild for me personally and professionally. And since I was doing the show notes and the promotion for this podcast, I couldn't stay on top of that and also get client work done and also show up for my family. And so again, if I had other people that I could outsource those other pieces to, then it probably would have gotten done. There's even an episode that's been recorded. Adam has brilliantly edited it, and it is just kind of chilling in Google Drive until I get it out there. And so again, it just makes sense to have somebody handle all those other pieces for you to make sure it not only sounds good and looks good and is content that people actually want to listen to, but also that the show notes are amazing and that they sound like your voice and that you can use them for Instagram captions and use them as blog posts and that you have a beautiful audiogram, video promotion clip from the episode that you can share out. Just knowing that all those things are taken care of for you is going to be the difference maker between having a podcast that is consistent and growing and having a podcast that is kind of dead in the water before it even starts. I hate to say it like that, but as somebody who is 2 episodes into a podcast that started, 5 months ago? I can speak from experience and say that if you don't have somebody working on all the aspects of a podcast, it's likely to not go out the way that you want it to, in the speed that you want it to, and as consistently as you'd like it to. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know over on Instagram what other topics you want to see about podcasting, YouTube production. My flop era series is coming. I'm about to see if I can record that real quick before my time runs out in the studio. But I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one. That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Written reviews are incredible, but even a quick 5-star review is so helpful for our show. You can also rate us on Spotify. If you listen over there, you can give us 5 stars over there as well. Be sure to follow us over on Instagram and YouTube at Novice Studios CLT and share the show with a fellow podcaster to spread the word. See you next time.